So, continuing this series of book reviews on big topics for culture designers, the topic that I want to explore today and the book that I want to review is this: The Zero Marginal Cost Society by Jeremy Rifkin. And the subtitle is The Internet of Things, the Collaborative Commons, and the Eclipse of Capitalism. So, what this book does that's really important for us working on global change today is it lays out how paradigm shifts happen structurally and culturally within societies when there's a convergence of discoveries in three different sectors. And that is the ability to communicate, the ability to transport or move things around, and the ability to produce energy that drives the entire process. And what happens in this book that Jeremy Rifkin does is he describes how there's a revolution happening in all three of those areas that are converging on a very different paradigm for economic production in the 21st century. And in particular, there is a phenomenon where in capitalist markets, the competitive advantage is gained by one company over another by having the ability to reduce their marginal cost for production and distribution. So if there are two companies that are producing a similar kind of good, let's say a microchip for computer hardware, that the company that is able to lower its marginal cost will be able to make a slight profit advantage, making a little bit more money over a competitor that has to pay more for inputs. So in this basic process of an evolutionary selection process giving benefit and strength or adaptive fitness to companies that are able to lower marginal costs, you end up with a system that is continually driving all forms of costs toward their lowest marginal value. So what does this do in the long run? Well, something that economists have been saying for decades is that capitalism will drive these economic processes to greater and greater efficiency until the marginal cost is minimized. What they didn't ever appreciate was possible would be that the marginal cost could get so low that capitalism itself would basically destroy itself in the version that it is existing, no longer function properly, and that a different economic paradigm would become needed. So basically, this idea is that Jeremy Rifkin is putting forth is that capitalism itself, through its own forms of selective advantage, what makes capitalism resilient and strong as an evolutionary process in culture is also what's going to lead to its demise. And this is a very provocative and controversial claim, although I think on my reading of the data that he gives in the book, I think that he's basically correct, and that we're moving into a place where the cost of production for information and for distribution of goods and services, so distributed and decentralized manufacturing and decentralized renewable energy production together are creating a convergence of what you could loosely think of as an internet-like, digitally connected, networked manufacturing distribution system that is open source, that is open collaboration, that is localized, that is resilient, that has multiple locuses for where production and distribution are happening, that we're now moving into a time where that is, from an economic perspective, becoming inevitable and unstoppable. So if this is the case, if it is true that the capitalist structures of the late 20th century, the dynamic processes of selection, competition, and adaptive fitness for companies is driving the entire economic system into its own end game, while at the same time birthing an open collaboration, sharing economic system based on transparency, based on distributed production of all manner of things, media content, information, as well as energy systems, energy production, and goods and services. That as this process unfolds, we're able to unleash a new kind of efficiency in the way that our ecological footprint for market activities will be dramatically reduced because the cost of the inputs from increasingly scarce resources is a cost that can be allocated very dynamically in this decentralized system. So there are a lot of details to how this works and why it's an important thing for all of us working on large-scale social change to be aware of. I really think that Jeremy Rifkin is just eloquent in the way that he makes the case. So this book, The Zero Marginal Cost Society, really lays out this vision for the future and offers some very concrete advice on where to make investments strategically, what kinds of storytelling to be done to accelerate the adoption of these new technological and cultural innovations so that society more rapidly makes the transition. At the same time, we need to be very aware that there are very entrenched, powerful interests that are benefiting from the status quo of the old system that are working very hard to keep this from happening. Whether that's trying to remove net neutrality on the internet so that there's less of an equal playing field for information to be exchanged, or if it's holding up government subsidies for antiquated energy production systems like subsidies for oil and coal that are both environmentally destructive and increasingly costly to produce, that these kinds of structural resistance are there and we need to be aware of them. So there's great risk and great opportunity in the next 10 to 15 years to make the transition to this new economic paradigm or not. And for those of us that are trying to get to the new paradigm, this book is a really good roadmap. So go grab your copy today, read it, think deeply about the implications of these dynamic processes in terms of a complex systems approach. How do all the pieces fit together? What are the underlying dynamics? And what are the possible patterns that can form? When we think in this way and we apply the insights that Jeremy Rifkin and others are bringing, we can guide civilization toward this new way of operating and eventually get to a place of greater planetary thriving and sustainability. So there you go. For culture designers working in all domains of society right now, this is a really good resource for you to pick up and read and get a better sense of the macroeconomic forces that are shaping the possibilities of the future. Enjoy.